Hello, this is Dr. Anthony Davidson. I'm a Dean at Fordham University, a proud member of the Kosherica family of scholars, and honoured to be a part of this inspirational Messages of Hope series. We are currently in the midst of a difficult period of time in the Jewish calendar. Typically, it's a sad time, an increasingly depressing one, culminating in a day that could best be described as calamitous. It's a period of Hester Panim, based on the verse in Devarim, V'anochi haster astir panai bayomahu, and I will surely conceal my face on that day, says Hashem. As we slowly recover from the fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic, perhaps these are the last emotions that we would want thrust upon us, a stark reminder of the losses we have suffered, and all that we have been experiencing for the past 4 months. But a closer look, especially through the lens of the Hasidic masters, will reveal that it really is a time of opportunity, and their writings always reflect, both in tone and in content, a most positive approach. Indeed, within the very pasuk itself, V'anochi haster astir panai, there is a symbol of hope. Hope during what would be a very dark time in our history, with an impending sense of doom and despair. Hope represented by the very person who turned out to be the hidden facilitator of our salvation, and whose name is concealed in that phrase. None other than Queen Esther herself. A homophonic play on the words, Astir, Esther. We say every morning in davening a litany of phrases extolling all that Hashem does for us. Pol Gavuros, Osa Chadashos, Baal Melchamos, Area Tzedakos, Masmiach Yeshuos, Bora Refuos. He sows kindnesses, nurtures salvations, creates cures. But upon closer inspection, there is a very incongruent phrase in there, Baal Melchamos, master of wars. How does that fit in with all the other things that God does? And I heard a very interesting answer that says, very simply, that in order to bring about good, Hashem has to create upheaval. And yes, that means even wars. Tradition has it that Leidas ben David, the birth of the Mashiach, will be on Tisha B'av. Now, the Talmud tells us that when the enemies entered the Holy of Holies, they found the Keruvim embracing. Let's backtrack for one moment. There was a dispute as to whether the Keruvim were facing each other or in opposite directions in general. And the Talmud reconciles that dispute by telling us that it depended on whether or not the Jewish people were doing the will of God. So the obvious question is, well, shall we say that at the time of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, we can safely assume that the Jewish people were not exactly on their best behavior? So why were the Keruvim embracing? The Bnei Yissaschar beautifully explains that Hashem was actually saying goodbye to us in an intimate embrace, as one would find between a husband and wife. It was the classic airport scene in which two people hug and don't want to let go because they're going to be separated and distant, and they don't know when they're going to see each other again. This was actually a time of intimacy. Hashem was saying, in the closest way possible, I'm going away now, but I still love you. And even though we won't be able to experience the kind of physical contact we have had, I'm still hoping that we can find other ways in which to connect. During a time of separation, one has an opportunity to focus on other aspects of the relationship. And we too need to show our closeness to Hashem in other ways. Examine the essence of our relationships with God and with others. On Tisha B'av, we lost our Beis HaMikdash and our identity as a people. But during this pandemic, we lost our Mikdash Ma'at, our shuls. They were closed. And the social distancing restrictions imposed upon us a loss of identity as individuals and as people. But during this time, we must be cognizant of the fact that the presence of absence is not the absence of presence. And Hashem is still present, and we have an opportunity to solidify and develop our relationship and communication with Hashem, which is done primarily through the study of Torah. One of the real reasons why we make a siyum during the 9 days, not just so we can eat meat. So this is a time to improve our communication, to listen for the cues Hashem sends us, and to observe and focus on what makes our relationships with Hashem and with people special. In fact, I'd like to say that message is conveyed by the first word of each of the 3 haftorahs we read during this period of time. Divrei, communication; Shimu, listening; Chazon, observing. We understand that times are difficult right now, but there is much going on behind the scenes, and they are a portent of great things to come.